The quarterfinals are upon us, and this is when things really get interesting. Some of the best teams in the world with some of the best players in the world are going to come head to head to see who earns the right to go to the semifinals of the World Cup. Among the matchups is one with incredible historical significance: England versus France, a matchup that before the World Cup is one I think a lot of people wanted to see. You've got a young Three Lions squad with some really exciting, dynamic players, buoyed by some veterans like Kyle Walker and Henderson, and of course the captain Harry Kane. But on the other side of the field, Le Bleu, the defending world champions, with the reigning best player in the world, Mbappe, and a whole host of really good players behind him. No one has been able to stop Mbappe yet. Will the English be able to do it? It's going to be an interesting game, and I'm really excited to talk about it on this episode of the Anchor Report. We'll be getting into a few other of the quarterfinal matchups as well, but all that and more on this episode of the Anchor Report. What's up? My name is Sam. This is the Anchor Report, a show about all things American soccer. And since the Americans got bounced in the World Cup, it's just all things soccer right now. So if you're into that, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you really want to support the channel, you can become a member. So speaking of supporting the channel, we're going to hear a word from this week's sponsor. Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. Bet online, where the game starts. So we bring in producer Brad, who's been hard at work setting up some graphics for today's show. Brad, we've got a really exciting round of 16 coming up ahead of us. I'd say most of the teams you were expecting to win in the round of 16 did in fact win. So the quarterfinal is just banger matchup after banger matchup. I'd say the only one was maybe Spain versus Morocco, but even then, like, the Spanish team just never really was all that impressive in this tournament, never really hit their stride. What were your thoughts on the round of 16, and what are you looking forward to in this quarterfinal?
You know, it provided some great drama. Unfortunately, a few missed opportunities and some a little bit of a lack of depth from our boys couldn't see us through to this round of 8. It'd be a little bit more exciting if it had happened. But you know what? There's still a lot of great soccer to be played. And the bracket's really shaping up very nicely. And the game we're going to focus on today is really a marquee matchup of young, exciting talent, two teams with both probably close to $1 billion transfer market evaluation going up against each other. They're just going to have at it. And you and I probably both agree. We talked about it a little bit. The winner of this game probably comes out of this side of the bracket. If you want to take a look at that side of the bracket right now, there it is. There is this bracket. So,
yeah, and you know, you look at the bottom of the bracket there with Morocco versus Portugal. Portugal has looked really, really good in this tournament, I think. But yeah, I think you're right in that if England or France go through, I think I would favor both of those nations against Portugal. And if you're England and you're sitting here, like, you knew getting to the World Cup wasn't going to be easy. But you really have an opportunity in your hands right now. If you could somehow get through the French in this quarterfinal game, and we're gonna get into this England versus France games right now. But let's talk about England for a second. So far in this tournament, I know the U.S. played England in the group stage. What have you seen from England in this tournament?
a team that can be extremely explosive at times, and a team that can be vulnerable if the right plan is enacted against them. So they have an absolute embarrassment of riches up front. When you're bringing the starters for Manchester City off your bench, you know you've got a very, very potent attack. But that being said, unless Jude Bellingham is really having his day, their midfield can look a little pedestrian at times. And again, we're looking at times when Harry Maguire, once he's one of those guys, when he puts on his nation shirt, he turns into a different player. He can't even find the 11 at Manchester United, but has had a very solid tournament, and that back line for England has looked very good.
Yeah, the back line has looked good. The back line has been steady, but it seems like every other position has. There's been a lot of rotation, and it seems like they're really searching to still kind of figure out what that ideal lineup is. I mean, we've seen Saka, we've seen Sterling, we've seen Foden, we've seen Grealish. It's been Harry Kane manning that striker position, but all the wingers have been switched out. And in the midfield, I mean, we've seen Mount, we've seen Bellingham, we've seen Rice. We've seen Henderson. So they're really still kind of trying to figure out that perfect formula. It seems like since they made the move to bring Henderson in, it's added a little bit of stability, I think, which has helped out a bit. But is this still a team that's just trying to figure out what the best foot forward for them is in this tournament?
I don't think that's necessarily the question. I think it's more of a luxury than anything else. We've seen them be able to rotate players in and out so much that they have fresh legs. Something that was a contributing factor to the United States men's national team's downfall is that we could not rotate, but a team with as much depth as the English can rotate, and that's I think that's more of a contributing factor. The only game we've really seen them struggle in was against the United States, and if I'm inside the mind of Greg Berhalter, yes, he was focusing a lot on Wales, but also I think he had a very solid game plan months in advance for the English.
Yeah, yeah, and it was a fresh U.S. national team, and we really got the full benefit of the MMA midfield going at their midfield, but at the same time, it was still kind of an even rubber match, and I think oftentimes in these World Cups we'll see these great powers just kind of sleepwalk their way through the group stage, and then once they get to the knockout rounds, we really get to see how good these teams can be, and I think that was a case for a lot of these teams because we get to that round of 16 and we just see a lot of lopsided victories where it seems like for the first time in this tournament, a lot of these teams just wake up and just beat the hell out of whoever happens to be in front of them. And I think that's what we saw from England against Senegal.
Yes, but I think also we have to take into account that Senegal is missing Sadio Mane, but also we have to remember that other than that US game, this team won 6-2 and just beat the brakes off of Iran. And what was the final score of the Wales game? I can't. Was it 3-0,
I'm
4-0?
not sure. Yeah.
It was a lot to a little. It was not good. So I think we have seen it's absolutely crazy to me that after the game against the U.S., everyone was chanting for Gareth Southgate's head
Yeah.
across the pond. But still, this team has unleashed its firepower plenty in this tournament. But when you have the attack that this team has, that's kind of par for the course, really.
Now, speaking of teams with an attack, let's shift gears and talk about the reigning world champions,
Oh
Les
boy.
Bleus, the French national team. You're talking about a national team that comes into the tournament without the Ballon d'Or winner, Karim Benzema, without maybe the greatest midfielder of his generation, N'Golo Kante, without Paul Pogba, who was just instrumental in the 2014 World Cup. I mean, without Lucas Hernandez, he's out for this tournament. The French have several players out for their national team, which would be the greatest players ever produced for a whole host of other national teams out there. I mean, they've got a really who's who of players not playing for this team, and yet the 26 players that they brought to the tournament are still considered top favorites, if not favorites, to get to the final. Tell me what you see in this French national team that is just so loaded with firepower.
I think it's hard to see anything other than the guy who's grabbing all the headlines, and that's Kylian Mbappe. There's a reason that he basically owns PSG right now. I mean, they gave him a deal that would make LeBron James blush. I mean, they call LeBron Le GM. What does that make Kylian Mbappe at this point? But he has so much talent and craves the biggest stage. I mean, this is a guy who um, is I think he's tied on goals with Pele for World Cup goals, and he's only 23. So there are many, many great parts to this French national team, but it's hard to look past the headliner.
It's pretty incredible in a tournament full of just the top players in the world. He seems to just be a cut above, and
Hmm.
even whenever he's up against top level competition, it just seems like the field is tilted his direction. I mean, there's other guys on this French national team that are just no jokes. You know, like Olivier Giroud is one of the top strikers in the world right now. I mean, not on the top echelon, but he's made a career playing in knockout round Champions League teams.
Yeah.
Ousmane Dembele was sold to Barcelona not too long ago for a significant sum of money. They've got some really good players on this team, and yet it seems like every time the French get the ball, it's all about where is Mbappe, where is Mbappe, and we saw some goals from him in their last game. Who did they play? They played Poland that
Poland.
were just that were just stunning. That
Yeah.
that were just like he was moving at a different speed and everybody else was standing still, which is pretty incredible to say considering we're talking about the round of 16 in the World Cup.
Yeah. Absolutely. Poland's game plan going in was hopefully Chesney can save us and Louis will poach a few goals. They made Poland just absolutely look pedestrian. Which I mean, this is a let's not forget this is a team in the World Cup. This is a team with top level players. But when you can do that, I mean that front three, we are really gonna. I mean, if there aren't fireworks in this game, if you don't bet the over in this game, I will be shocked because if you look at Mbappe, Giroud, Dembele going up against the top three of probably Harry Kane, Kaio Saka, and Phil Foden, I mean, if that doesn't spell fireworks, I don't know what does.
But at the same time, you've got some of the top defenders in the world
Yeah.
playing in this game as well, which is why this matchup is going to be so fascinating. And that brings us to what I really want to do today, which is to put together our combined 11s. I want to know of these two rosters, like what would be your choice, and hopefully that points us in the direction of which team is gonna wind up winning this game. So I want to start out with goalkeepers. I
Okay.
think this is a fairly easy decision. You got Jordan Pickford and you got Hugo Lloris. Who you got for the goalkeeper?
Probably Lloris. I mean, he's a captain, he's a leader, and he seems to be a bit calmer than Jordan Pickford. But then again, maybe that's one of the things that the English guys respond to is Jordan Pickford being back there, just being an absolute maniac. But in the knockout rounds, this deep in the tournament, I want someone who's going to be guaranteed a steady Eddie back there. So I'd go with Hugo Lloris.
Yeah, I'm going with Lloris as well. I think we've just seen him earn his stripes. It's for playing at such a high level for such a long period of time. I don't know anyone who would that doesn't is outside of England that would pick anybody but Lloris out of those two. I think it gets a little bit more interesting as we get to this back line.
Mhm.
Let's start with the left back. Left back is interesting. I think if everyone's healthy, I'd probably pick Lucas Hernandez at this left back position, the left back for Bayern Munich, but he's out
Yep.
of this tournament. So his younger brother Theo is actually filling in for that left back spot. Both of them phenomenal players. And then for England, we've seen Luke Shaw be the left back for England throughout the tournament. Who do you think you got for the left back for your combined 11?
Honestly, Luke Shaw has been a bit of a surprise for me this tournament. He sometimes can look a little lackluster at Manchester United, but in this tournament, he really has shown his quality. So I'd probably go with Luke Shaw on this one.
Yeah, I have Theo Hernandez. I
Okay.
think he's a little bit more dynamic, which I'm looking for in my squad. Even though the squad is going to be absolutely ridiculous, and maybe we don't need our left back to get up and down the field quite as much. So, I mean, I think this is one of the true toss ups in this
Yeah.
lineup. Let's move on to the center back position. We're going to have to take two center backs. Tell me one of your center backs right now. And we've got some great ones to choose from, man. I mean, John Stones and Harry Kane have been manning the line for England throughout this World Cup. Upamecano and Varane have been the two who have really been holding it down for France. Who do you have?
I'd go, and this is probably going to get me some heat. I'd go Varane and Maguire. I think Harry Maguire is due for a goal in the air, and Varane has been very steady and very vocal on that back line for France. I'd probably go, Varane Maguire, and
And
and, and yes, I'm willing to take all the heat for choosing Harry Maguire.
I didn't think about this until you just said it, but by choosing Varane and Maguire, you're taking Manchester United's two center backs. So
Yes.
you're also got that built-in chemistry from the two that have been playing together for a long time. I don't know if that matters in our mystical, magical world that we're creating right here with this best 11, but it is interesting.
I think it definitely does, especially when you're I mean, center backs are two of your most vocal positions on the pitch, and usually you have to have one voice. That would be a real benefit to everybody know which voice they're listening to on the pitch, whether it's Varane or Maguire. So yeah, I would go with guys who know each other. So Varane and Maguire for me.
Yeah, so far your back line is Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, and Rafael Varane. So you got an all Man U party going on right now.
Not
I
bad.
switched it up a little bit. I went with Varane as well, who I think is the best center back of this group. But I went with John Stones instead,
Mhm.
and I don't know. It's hard to really split Stones and Maguire, but I feel like Stones is just that player that you just don't hear his name very often because he's just so damn steady. He doesn't really
Mhm.
make mistakes. He's just consistent. And he's a player that Pep Guardiola relies on in that back line. And I think it says a lot about the player that he is. I mean, you don't hear his name called very much at all, and I think that's a tribute to just how good of a defender that he is.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. The marquee of a good center back is you never have to hear from him.
All right, let's move on to the right back position. Let's see, England. England kind of has an embarrassment of riches at the right back position. I mean, Kyle Walker has been one of the top right backs in the world for a while. Trent Alexander-Arnold is a player that we haven't seen very much in this tournament, but we know with his exploits at Liverpool that he's one of the very best in the world at what he does. We haven't seen Reece James is not in this tournament, but he's another excellent,
Yeah.
excellent top shelf right back. And then for France, they've been rolling with Koundé throughout this tournament. Who do you think is your right back in this combined 11?
Koundé is a great option. Really, I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is. I mean, that he hasn't seen as much playing time as he did during the Euros or the last World Cup, but that's because he really has been exposed for his defensive liabilities. I mean, he is very, very dangerous going forward. I don't think there's many right backs better in the world going forward or on set pieces than Trent. But for me, if you're going up against attacks this potent, you have to have someone who's a little more reliable in staying at home. So I go with Kunde.
And I thought about the speed as well. I actually went with Kyle Walker, just a player that can bring so much dynamism to your squad because he can do so many different things. I mean, he can line up as a third center back in a back three if you kind of want to switch him in and out right there. He can kind of hop into the midfield if you need him to, and of course, he can get up and down that right flank. We know about just his elite athleticism and just the amount of stuff that he brings to the table. I think one of the most fascinating matchups in this England versus France game is going to be Kyle Walker versus Mbappe. See how they go head to head because you're talking about two players who are lightning fast, who are very physical, and just Kyle Walker's been around the block a time or two. So it's going to be really interesting how those players match up. But I'm going with Kyle Walker.
Apparently, Southgate has been developing for the past while now a secret Mbappe plan. So we'll see, man. I'm sure everybody who's come against them, everybody in League On, the Champions League, and in this World Cup has had a secret plan to stop Mbappe. But many have tried, very few have succeeded.
Yeah, I don't know about that. We'll see what he does. Let's move on to the midfield. I mean, a who's who of names in the midfield.
Yeah.
For England, we have seen Jordan Henderson, we've seen Mason Mount, we've seen Declan Rice, we've seen Jude Bellingham. For France, they've really been rolling with Rabiot has taken up a whole lot of
Mhm.
minutes, and then Chouameni and Kamavinga have really been holding it down in the midfield for France. Give me one midfielder that's going to be your first guy that you're putting in there.
Mr. Jude Bellingham.
Wow. Of
Yes.
all the names, you're going with Jude Bellingham first.
Yes, I think he has been the breakout, one of the breakout stars of this tournament, and we've been really lucky to, with as much as we've watched Gio Reyna, we've gotten also to see Jude Bellingham, and he's a special guy. And yes, there are a lot of big names in there, but I think this is one of the moments for Jude.
Yeah, I can see that, but if I want a young, exciting, explosive central midfielder, I'm going with Chouameni. I mean, this guy has really exploded on the scene, on the world soccer scene. I just checked; he's worth $80 million right now on the transfer market, which is a pretty significant upgrade. How old is he right now? He is 22 years old. He reminds me a lot of Weston McKennie in that
Yeah.
they're both just like physically dominant players. But I think Chouameni just has a level of consistent class and quality that might be a little bit beyond Weston McKennie at this point. I mean, you see a lot of like deep line playmaking type things and through balls and balls over the top. Just a fantastic soccer player that France just apparently they just grow on trees out there.
Yeah.
Who is your second midfielder?
Oh gosh, Rabiot, Griezmann, great options. Yeah, I'd probably go Griezmann, honestly. I mean, I can't choose Chouameni, can I?
You can if
I
you
can,
want.
yeah. Then I would do Chouameni. Yeah, Bellingham, Chouameni. Yeah, those probably be my two. I think Jude has the work rate, and he's able to be here, there, and everywhere. Like you said, Chouameni is just such an athlete on the field as well. So those would be my two probably. And then
Yeah.
for my third, I want an old guy in there.
So I'm thinking a more defensive player, maybe a connector, and then a creative player in there. So I think my connector, I'm I'm going back and forth between Rabio and Declan Rice. Um,
Okay.
Declan Rice is a player that's always I just he's got so much hype around him, and I don't know about it, but then at the same time, Rabio is a player that I've just never been super impressed with. Whenever
Yeah.
we're talking about like the elite of the elite players in the world, but I think I'm gonna go with Rabio in this case. I think he's just got a little bit more class than Declan Rice. I think we saw in the U.S. game that Declan Rice really just struggled to really get into that game. It's kind of a wash for me, but I'm going to go with Rabio in this particular game. I think he's going to offer that connectivity that's going to go well with Chouameni, and we've actually seen that for France for a number of games. So that's my second midfielder.
I mean, that's a good shout. I mean, for me, Declan Rice, I see it, but I think there's, and this may get some heat in the comments, but I think there's a lot of English hype
Yeah,
there. That he's an English guy, so they're gonna
yeah.
they
And I
tend to
see I
over.
see BMR here says Bellingham's market value is 100 million euros right now, which
That's
I think
English.
might be a little bit of that English sauce as well. Like Jude
Yeah,
Bellingham's an incredible player, but $100 million is a significant amount of money for that
yeah,
guy.
yep, absolutely, absolutely. Shall we
Third
move?
midfielder.
Third midfielder. I mean, if we're going off of their last lineups, I gotta either choose Griezmann or Henderson, and I mean, I think I'd choose Henderson. I think I'd go with Henderson. I mean, he's just got that slow heartbeat. He's been on the biggest stage so many times, and you can always sub him off if he's winded. So, I think if we're going with Robbie, two young guns, I think we need an old guy in there to calm everybody down.
So you have Bellingham, you have Chouameni, and you have Henderson. So that is a stiff midfield to play through. Uh, I'm going a little bit different direction. I'm gonna go with Griezmann. I'm gonna go with a guy that's gonna jump into the attack and kind of get forward a little bit more. Maybe possibly get on the end of some balls played back through the box from some of our dynamic wingers. So I'm thinking about Griezmann, but obviously your midfield is going to be a little bit more defensively stout, and I think mine's going
Yeah,
to be a little bit more creative.
Yeah, I mean for me, I think you have so many that front line's going to be so uh whatever you choose is going to be incredibly powerful. So the ability to stop the attack coming the other way, I think I put a little bit more value. I think I put a little bit more value on than you did.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Let's jump to the front line. I think let's start with the wingers. You can pick two wingers, but I think we're really just picking one winger because I think there's one guy that we both have. I think Kylian Mbappe is going to be both on both of our sheets.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yep.
can move
That's
on there. I mean, probably the best player in the world right now. Just
yep.
a combination of just the way that he reads the game is absolutely spectacular. And combining that with the physical gifts that he has to once he reads that game, once he figures out where he needs to be, there's just not a player on the world in the world that can beat him to that spot. He can
Yeah.
out physical you, he can outspeed you, he can out agility you, and then once the ball gets on his feet, his technical ability just allows him to just effortlessly walk by the best defenders in the world. He just steps right by them and just does things that are so special. He makes it look so damn easy right out there. Just a phenomenal player. So yeah, he's going to be both of our wingers, but that means we have to pick a second winger, and we got a lot of players we can choose from. I mean,
Yeah.
France has been rolling with Ousmane Dembele. We've also seen Kingsley Coman. England has Bukayo Saka, Raheem Sterling, Phil Foden, and Jack Grealish. So who are you
They don't
picking?
have Sterling. He had to go home because his house got robbed. Um, Unfortunately. But yeah, embarrassment of riches on both sides. Gosh, I think I got to go with Phil Foden. And it pains me to leave Bukayo Saka on the bench because I think he is very very special. But I think Phil Foden is a little just a touch faster, just a touch more creative on the ball. And gosh, it pains me to leave Saka on the bench, and same with Dembele because they're both top quality players. But for me, I'm going with Phil Foden.
It's an interesting one. I mean, Ousmane Dembele was just such a heralded player whenever he was coming out of Dortmund, but I think since he's arrived at Barca, it's just failure to launch type of thing. Like he's just never been that guy that we thought he'd be at this
Yeah,
point in time. Um, Foden, Saka, and Grealish. It's just that's it's hard to separate those guys. I
yeah.
went with Bukayo Saka. I thought of the three,
And
he's
totally okay with that, by the
He's
way.
been electric, man.
Yeah,
He's been I think this straw that stirs the drink in the attacking third for England in this tournament. Just a player that I think he's a big reason why Arsenal are doing so damn well in the Premier League
absolutely.
this year. Just a phenomenal young player that just seems like he's just come out of nowhere and become just one of the most important players on the English national team. I can see Phil Foden as well. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to really split Foden and Grealish for me.
Yeah,
But I'm going with Saka. I can understand any of them in this position.
yeah. They're all top quality players. You know, huh. I like Foden. I think Grealish comes off the bench every single time between these guys because I think I think Bukayo is going to develop into a real top player. I think he and Jude Bellingham are definitely um, just the future of this England team. But I'd probably go with Foden in this one. I think I
Last
think
but not,
I
I'm
think he's
sorry.
got a little more pep in his step.
Last but not least, we're going to go with the striker up top. And, this is an interesting one because you feel like if Kareem Benzema is in the mix, like he's probably the guy. But since he's not, and it's Olivier Giroud, Giroud is like I said before, he's a player that's been earning a lot of money playing for very good teams for a long time. But at the same time, it seems like every time he finds a team, the teams are always trying to figure out like who's going to be the next striker. He's very very good, but not quite elite. Harry Kane, on the other hand, has been one of the top strikers in the Premier League for a number of years. He's the captain of England. He's just got a boatload of goals. He also offers you a whole lot in the hold up play. He can drop back in the midfield and create. He can offer you a lot of things. I don't know that Olivier Giroud is quite as dynamic. Is that how you're seeing it as well?
That's how I see it as well. But I gotta give Olivier Giroud his flowers because I watched him a lot in Serie A last season, and all the guy does is score goals. And at the end of the day, isn't that what you're asking of your number nine? I know that's a vast oversimplification of things, but he is a top player, and it's so weird to see him bounce around so much and then just do the exact same thing at every single stop. But to be fair, Harry Kane is England's captain and is just a mainstay in that lineup and just a marquee of consistency. So for many other reasons, mainly because although I did just say, you want your number nine scoring goals, Harry Kane does offer you a lot more. And he does offer a lot in his hold up play and his link up play, especially with his wingers. I mean, he could do some scary things with Kylian Mbappe, even though he already has some great attacking wingers with him. But yeah, I think we're both on the same side here. I think you go with Harry Kane.
Yeah, I think it's the choice that you have to make in this situation. But now that we've kind of gone through the lineup and we've discussed these teams out at length, how do you think this game is going to go? For me, I think I think we've got a Brazil versus France showdown coming in a few weeks. It just feels like that's where we're going towards. I see Kylian Mbappe and just don't know how anyone in the world stops him right now. And while Stones and Harry Maguire are very good center backs, Kylian Mbappe is just eating very good center backs alive right now. I don't know that they're quite as dynamic and athletic as what they're going to be getting from Kylian Mbappe, and France is just such a good team that you cannot deny the ball to him. He's going to get his opportunities to run down your face, and I really hate whenever pundits like make a game all about one player. Like whenever it's like Ronaldo versus Messi, and that's all they talk about. But whenever you watch this French team play, it's just so much Mbappe, man. I mean, they just feed him. The left flank is just his all game. They kind of sit back and just like allow him to have as much space as he needs. And when he's running down that left flank, man, there's not a lot you can do about it. You kind of hope that he just either misses or just something happens. I just don't know what you do about that if you're anybody in this tournament, including England.
Yeah, you don't stop him. You only hope to contain him. That's an old cliche, but it's true in this scenario. I mean, he introduced himself to the world in 2018 on the world stage when France won the World Cup, but this really feels like his and it helps that Erling Haaland isn't there, but he's grabbing the soccer world by the throat and saying that this is the changing of the guard is going in a French direction. It's going in Mbappe's direction. I do, hopefully Southgate's secret plan to stop Mbappe leads to this being a great game. And I do see a great game. And I'm hoping, and every time I've called for goals in this tournament, I've had a 0-0 draw shoved back in my face. But I do think we could see a lot of goals and a lot of special moments from some young players coming out
I see.
of this game. But at the end of the day, I do think this is Mbappe's moment, and I think France is going on to the basically a date with destiny, seeing if they can repeat.
And that France versus Brazil matchup would just be incredible, but
Mhm.
we still got to get there first. I see Dan W here says so hard to properly rate these guys because the English media they've said Foden has more potential than Messi, and they take Mount over Neymar. And the English media does loom large whenever we're making these discussions because I think so much of the soccer world is influenced by the English media and what they say, and we know that they overinflate their players historically, both whenever it comes to how much press they get, how much money they're worth in the transfer market, and sometimes how much time they get playing. Because it does seem like, especially in the Premier League, if you're English, you're going to get a little bit more leeway whenever it comes to starting than maybe a foreign-born player. Whenever we look at these matchups, it seems like, I mean, on paper, it seems like the English still have a shot in this game. Uh, it, are we overrating this English side?
I don't. It's hard to say because they've blown the doors off of everybody they were supposed to blow the doors off against, except for the United States, who everybody thought they were going to take us to the absolute woodshed, but they didn't. Because I think we had a plan for them, and we had been developing that plan for a very, very long time. So I don't know. I think you got a lot of big soccer brains over there in that French camp that I think are looking at the English lineup and seeing where they can pick it apart. But to be fair, there are some great, exciting players on this English team. I do think that we could see a lot of fireworks in this game. And like I said before, if I were a betting man, I'd probably take the over in this one.
Now let's play a game right here. Let's assume that Kylian Mbappe doesn't exist for a second, and maybe Kingsley Coman starts up top for France. So you would get Coman and Dembele and Giroud up top. At that point, is it more of a dead rubber game? Is it more of a pick 'em, or would England be clearly have the advantage?
I think I don't think it would be a sizable advantage, but I think it would be an advantage. I think you'd have a very clear advantage on the front three. And yeah, if that were the case, I would absolutely pick England, but it's not. It's not. You just got a guy who is. We've been blessed to see the Messi Ronaldo debate rage on, and I think that's one of the great things in sports is when you have two amazing athletes in
Yeah.
their prime at the same time. And we're coming in. We're going to be coming into that with Holland and Mbappe, and it's going to be very, very exciting. If Kylian Mbappe comes down with the flu or whatever, I'd probably take this English team. But we've seen it time and time again. The dude's a world beater.
I like what Dan W says here. Hate to break it to English fans, but they do not have an Mbappe, and very few people do at this
Yeah.
point. I mean, he's earned his title as the best player in the world. Maybe if Erling Haaland's in this tournament, maybe he has something to say about that. But gosh, I feel like Killian just has the opportunity to just make such an impact on the game
Yeah.
that I just don't know that even as good as Haaland has been, I think Killian's got the title. Anything more on Mbappe before we switch gears and talk about some of the other games?
No, if Charles Barkley, I know you're watching, his name is Mbappe, not Mbapu.
Yeah, that wasn't the first nor the last time Charles Barkley's going to mess up somebody's name. So you mentioned Ronaldo earlier. Portugal had a pretty phenomenal game against Switzerland, a game in which they did not start Cristiano Ronaldo, which I don't know if you heard that or not, but it was just anything anyone would talk about for that whole day. Ronaldo comes off the bench and looked like he wanted to score a goal more than anything in the world, but he was unable to do so. Of course, right before the tournament, Ronaldo goes on his now infamous interview with Piers Morgan, where he rips Manchester United. He has a few teammates on the Portugal side that play at Manchester United. There seems like there's some issues going on with Ronaldo and the rest of the team. We don't know, but that's always seems to be the case. This Portugal squad takes on Morocco, probably the lone surprise team to make it to the round of 16. They beat France. I mean, they beat Spain. Excuse me. I think Portugal has it, but how do you see this matchup?
I do think Portugal have it. It's sad to see what's happening with Ronaldo right now. I mean, I saw someone tweet it's like watching MJ on the Wizards. It's just not the same. Um, but that being said, they have plenty of firepower over there on that Portuguese side with Rafa Leao, who's just a beast from AC Milan, and Bruno Fernandes has really been pulling the strings for them and been really dangerous in the attack as well. Morocco has been a real nice feel good story, and it's also kind of frustrating as a U.S. fan because we whacked them 3-0 back in the summer. Um, but I do think their run ends here. But then again, with the whole Ronaldo thing, it'd be really nice to see the greats ride off into the sunset. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening here. Um, the guy who came in and basically was his replacement scored, and they immediately cut to Ronaldo on the bench, and it looked like they had just conceded. And it sucks to see that. Sometimes you in sports you watch a vet who can take the fact that they're in the twilight of their career, and he seems to be struggling with it. And granted, he has dealt with a lot of stuff off the field, family issues as well this year, but just on the pitch, it's been hard to watch.
Oh, the thing that made him such a great player was his belief in himself and his work ethic and just his unyielding desire to score goals and to be the guy. So to reach a point in his career where he might not necessarily be able to live up to that, it seems like there's some emotional things going and just a real struggle for the guy who has been the guy, probably the most famous person on earth. I think he's still the most followed person on social media, to kind of be reaching the twilight of his career and to have struggles at his club and now struggles at his national team. It is falling apart. Now we still have on the table potentially a Cristiano Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi World Cup final. It's a little bit unlikely. They're still on opposite sides of the bracket. Let's talk about that Argentina game because I find this one to be a really interesting matchup as well. These are I mean, we talked about this Netherlands team a few weeks ago or a week ago, whenever the U.S. was playing them, as a team that just hasn't really gotten out of second gear throughout this tournament. And we saw moments of it whenever they played the U.S. where they were just able to connect passes and get downfield and just score goals before the U.S. was even able to like open their eyes and realize what was going on. Um, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that continually for 90 minutes against Argentina. But at the same time, this is an Argentina team that has at times struggled to put it all together. I mean, they have scored goals in this tournament that not necessarily have been with the run of play. It seems like they've been really defensive, and then in moments, these great players come up big in these big moments, and they score these phenomenal goals. But it hasn't really been a cohesive 90-minute domination of teams like we've seen from some of the other teams in this tournament.
Yeah, and that we got used to seeing from Messi and his teams for so many years. I don't know. I think I definitely think Argentina are the favorites in this game, but I definitely think there's a little more to it than that. I think this Dutch team has a lot of cohesion in their lineup, and they're very smart and very tactical. But I do think that there is a lot of magic on this Argentinian side that will be able to break down what is a very, very stout backline from the Netherlands there. But I mean, they call him Messi the magician for a reason, it's because he's good at finding small spaces and making magic. So I do think that there are going to be moments for Argentina in this game. I definitely think it's going to be closer than a lot of people think, because people see the Argentinian flag, they think Messi, they think,
Yeah.
How could they not go through with against a team that has struggled to really assert dominance in all but their last game. But all things being considered, I'd still go with Argentina in this game.
Yeah, I think if all you watch were highlights from both of these teams, like you would be thinking, man, Argentina is just phenomenal in this
Yeah.
tournament. But it's just been putting together 90 minutes for them. It seems like it's been a struggle, and they're going up against a Dutch side, which while I don't know can compete with them as far as firepower and quality throughout. They play a game where it's kind of sit back and absorb pressure and
Mhm.
just allow teams to get close, but not quite close enough with Virgil van Dijk and Ake back there, Nathan Ake just being absolute rocks, just
Mhm.
kind of shutting down anything that comes in close, and then being able to counterattack with an absolute fury, and then
Mhm.
having the speed of Memphis Depay with the size and strength of Cody Gakpo, who's just been phenomenal throughout this tournament. It seems like it's going to be one of those games where Argentina was going to have a lot of the ball, and maybe you're going to kind of mess around for a while and then, give it up, and then we could see the Netherlands just come right down the field and slam it down their throats, and then it'll be, what happens then for Argentina? Are they going to be able to put it together? It seems like they have the firepower to do so.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Across the bracket from the Netherlands versus Argentina is a game which, maybe 4 years ago might have been a little bit more interesting, but in this particular iteration of the tournament, it feels like it's just one more team being sacrificed to the monster that is Brazil. It is Croatia versus Brazil. Croatia has its squad that, 4 years ago it seemed like Luka Modric was like 84 years old whenever he led this Croatian team to the finals of the 2014 World Cup. He's got 4 more years on him, so he's even less mobile than he was then. He's still an absolute maestro with the ball at his feet. You've got other guys on this squad like Mateo Kovacic from Chelsea and Ivan Perisic, who are quality players. It's a quality side, but whenever you compare them to what Brazil has, which is just some of the best players in the world and just absolute high level players across the board, and they're playing really well together right now. Is there any way that Brazil loses this match?
There's always a puncher's chance for the other team on any day, on any given day. One team can have their day over 90 minutes, but I don't see any tactical way that Croatian can run and keep up with the creativity and pace it's of this Brazil team. I mean, this Brazil team, I really think is on a date with destiny. They came up short when it was on home soil in 2014, but I mean, there's just so much quality on this team, and they're creative and they're having fun, and they're just playing this beautiful style of soccer that is really a joy to watch. And unfortunately for a Croatia team that has been very, very good and very, very quality, I think they're running into a bit of a buzzsaw. I don't think Brazil's going to be dancing on them that much. I think Croatia definitely puts up a bit more of a fight than South Korea did, but I definitely see Brazil just not making too much out of this one.
It's pretty incredible that we've reached the quarterfinals, and Brazil is going to be taking on, one of the top 8 teams in this tournament, at least by the bracket math, and it still feels like there's just such a gulf in talent. Is Brazil the most talented team in this World Cup whenever it comes to player to player talent? I mean, we talked about England, we talked about France. Is Brazil just eclipsing all of them?
Across the board, yes, I think you can point out a few positions here and there that you'd take talent from other areas, but any on any given day, you have a Brazil player that you could bring up that across the board would. I mean, they just have the depth and they just have the width of talent that I don't think a lot of other countries. I don't think there are any countries that really can compete with just the width of talent. Now, putting it all together and getting all of those guys to row in the same direction sometimes can be a bit of a challenge, but there's no denying the talent.
It is unbelievable, and I like how you kind of caught yourself there, like you were gonna say no other team maybe, but you're like, oh no, no, straight up, no other team is like this. There's just nobody else in the world that is like this. It's kind of been that way for a while, where Brazil has dominated world soccer. I really want to see this France versus Brazil matchup in the final. I think the only other team in the world that comes close to Brazil in terms of talent across the board is France. I would have loved to have seen it with N'Golo Kante, with Lucas Hernandez, with Paul Pogba, if he's even starting in this lineup right now, with Karim Benzema. I think at that point, you really got a discussion on your hands about Brazil versus France. We're not going to quite get that, but I still think that France is the squad that gives this Brazil team, at least on paper, the best matchup. I think Brazil goes through. I think it's going to be Brazil versus France in the finals. But as they say, you still got to play the game, and there's some matchups that can go either way here. I don't know if the Brazil Croatia one is one of them, but I think there's still some exciting matchups in this tournament. I gave my selection for who I think is gonna make it to the finals. Who do you think is gonna make it to the finals?
I'm probably with you. I think the most logical answer is Brazil versus France. Um, if England can slow down Kylian Mbappe, they have a shot. I definitely think the winner is coming out of that England France game. The winner of that side of the bracket, not the tournament. I definitely think this is Brazil's tournament now that they have Neymar healthier.
Yeah.
I think there's very few teams that can slow them down.
Now, there's a fascinating matchup potentially looming that I think could change things a little bit. And that's if Argentina get by the Netherlands and Brazil get by Croatia, then we have this Copa America rematch between Brazil and Argentina in the semifinals. And even though I think Brazil just outclasses Argentina at this point whenever it comes to head to head talent, there's just something about those two teams whenever they played against each other where it feels like that kind of goes out the window a little bit. And it's just, who's going to win it on that particular day? It's kind of a toss up.
Yeah, Brazil, Argentina would be one absolutely one for, that's pay per view viewing, and that's something that we're going to be able to get to see up close and personal in 2024 when the Copa America just announced today is coming to the USA, and Mexico, Canada, and the United States will be competing. So get your tickets now, folks. It'll be a great dry run for the World Cup in 2026.
Yeah, that's incredibly exciting, man. You think about just all the things happening in American soccer right now, and to have the Copa America in 2024, and then followed by the World Cup in 2026. Like this ride that is happening with in the United States with soccer, coming off of this World Cup is just going to keep going and going and going. It's really exciting in this country, just the quality of soccer that we're going to get to see. And I think the League Cup with MLS versus Liga MX. I think that starts next summer.
Yep.
That's going to be a big deal. I think that's going to be really interesting. But we got a World Cup to get through first before we get to that. Brad, I think we're going to wrap it up right here. Is there anything else that you have to say on this World Cup quarterfinal?
Well, now that the US is out, we can kind of just sit back, relax, and watch the best players in the world beat each other up, which is going to be just amazing. There are some matchups that I'm hoping for in the round of four, but to see everybody get there is going to be special. I mean, it's the greatest players on the greatest stage. You really can't beat it.
Absolutely, and I cannot wait for sure. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the comment section for kind of hanging out with us tonight. Make sure if you're new to the channel that you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. If you really want to support the channel, you can become a member. Shout out to, let me see if I can find it, all of my tier 2 members. Where's my list? I have notes. Let me go top of my head. Manuel Oliveras, Mike Irish, oh man, caught me off
Motorsports.
guard. Manuel Oliveras, Mike Irish, Chris Matassa. Gosh, I haven't done this in a while. I've been using the list as a crutch. I'll get the list next time, guys. I apologize for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. On behalf of Brad, my name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report brought to you by Bet Online.